Get off my land." The words came out calm, but my hand was already moving toward the Glock, holstered at my hip. Not drawing, just resting. A reminder that trespassing at dawn on a black man's property in rural Texas had consequences. The woman didn't flinch. She stood 15 feet from my porch, designer heels sinking into dirt that hadn't seen rain in 3 weeks, holding a clipboard like it was a warrant. Behind her, 2 men in HOA security vests flanked a surveyor's tripod they'd set up without permission. "Mr. Washington," she said, voice dripping with practiced authority. "This land falls under Sage Hill Estates jurisdiction as of last Tuesday. We're here to conduct a compliance inspection." I stepped off the porch, 6'2", 220, wearing yesterday's work shirt and the kind of stare I'd perfected during 18 years with the Army Corps of Engineers. The kind that made junior officers check their paperwork twice. "Last Tuesday?" I said quietly. "Funny. I bought this property 6 months ago. Deed says it's outside your HOA. County says it's outside your HOA. And my survey certified, stamped, recorded, says you're standing on my land right now." Her smile tightened. Not nervous, annoyed, like I was a stubborn stain she couldn't quite scrub out. "Records have been updated," she said. "You'll receive the official notice shortly. In the meantime, we've identified several violations. What's your name?" She blinked. "Excuse me?" "Your name. Since you're on my property at 6 in the morning without permission, I figure I should know who to list on the trespassing complaint." Her jaw clenched. Then she pulled herself straighter, chest out, chin up. The posture of someone who'd never lost an argument in her life. Karen Whitmore, president of Sage Hill Estates, Homeowners Association. She waited for recognition, didn't get any. And this isn't trespassing. This is enforcement. I looked past her at the 2 security guys, both white, both nervous, both realizing their boss had just walked them into a situation that could go sideways fast. "You've got 30 seconds to pack up that tripod and leave," I said, "or I call the sheriff." Karen's smile went cold. "Call him. Sheriff Bowman is a personal friend. He'll explain jurisdiction." "Good," I said, pulling out my phone. "Let's hear him explain it." She didn't move, didn't back down, just stood there, radiating the kind of confidence that comes from a lifetime of people doing what she said. That's when I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was war. And she just fired the first shot. I left Houston the day the settlement check cleared. August 15th, 2024. A Tuesday. The kind of oppressively hot Texas morning where the air feels like it's trying to suffocate you before 9 a.m. 18 years as a land surveyor and forensic mapping expert for the Army Corps of Engineers will teach you 2 things: how to read terrain that lies, and when to walk away from people who do the same. I'd spent the last 3 years testifying in federal cases, border disputes, where million-dollar developments hung on whether a survey stake was 6 inches east or west of where the developer claimed. Eminent domain challenges, where the government tried to take family land using maps that had been quietly altered in county offices. Environmental violations hidden in forged plat maps, developers burying contaminated soil and then redrawing boundaries to make it someone else's problem. Good work, important work, the kind that puts corrupt developers in prison and gives families back land that's been stolen through paperwork and lies, but it hollows you out. Too many lawyers breathing down your neck, treating you like a prop in their courtroom theater. Too many judges who don't understand the difference between a certified survey and something drawn in Microsoft Paint at midnight. Too many prosecutors asking you to explain, for the 5th time, why a GPS coordinate accurate to within 2 centimeters can't just be photoshopped by someone with a laptop and bad intentions. Too many nights in sterile hotel rooms near federal courthouses, reviewing case files until 2 a.m. because someone's entire life savings depended on whether you could prove their fence was on their own property. And too many cases where I'd watch families lose everything because some bureaucrat accepted a bribe to move a line on a map. After the last trial, a 3-week federal case in Dallas where I'd helped convict a county commissioner for selling easements that didn't exist, I sat in my truck in the courthouse parking lot and realized I couldn't do it anymore. Not the work itself. That was fine. necessary, even. But the city, the concrete, the constant grind of proving things that should have been obvious. I was 42 years old. No wife, no kids, no mortgage. Just a paid-off truck, a storage unit full of survey equipment, and a checking account that had more money in it than I'd ever had in my life. So when my Aunt Clara died in July and left me $180,000, her entire life savings from teaching elementary school for 37 years, I did what any burned-out veteran would do. I bought land, not a house with neighbors 6 feet away, not a condo with HOA meetings and monthly dues, not a rental property where I'd have to deal with tenants and toilets. Land. Real land. The kind with dirt that gets under your nails. The kind with rocks and trees and creeks that only run after a good rain. The kind where you can stand in the middle of it and not see another human being for miles. I found it 3 weeks later. Mid-August, heat index pushing 107 degrees, driving back roads west of San Antonio with a cooler full of water and a folder full of property listings. 200 acres of scrub oak, limestone outcroppings, and dry creek beds 40 minutes outside the city. The kind of property most people pass on because it needs work, because it doesn't have the perfect view or the cute little cottage that's ready for Instagram photos. But I saw potential. More than that, I saw freedom. The listing barely had photos. Just one faded aerial shot, taken from a county tax assessor's plane sometime in the early 2000s, and a brief description. Rural acreage, reclamation eligible, wildlife exempt, not part of any HOA. That last part made me grin so wide my face hurt. Not part of any HOA. I'd seen what HOAs do to people, testified in enough lawsuits to write a book about it, seen families bankrupted by fines for having the wrong shade of beige on their mailbox, seen veterans with PTSD threatened with legal action because their yard wasn't manicured to some committee's arbitrary standards. Seen elderly widows lose their homes because they couldn't pay thousands in accumulated fines for violations, like parking their own car in their own driveway overnight. The moment some bureaucrat with a clipboard gets the smallest taste of power over their neighbors, something breaks in their brain. They turn into petty tyrants, measuring grass height with rulers, taking photos of trash cans left out 12 minutes past the allowed time, sending violation notices for kids' chalk drawings on driveways. No thanks. Not ever. The property sat just outside Sage Hill Estates, a luxury subdivision that had sprung up 5 years ago when Austin tech money started spilling south into the hill country. McMansions on quarter-acre lots, all painted variations of the same 3 beige colors, with fake stone facades and HOA dues north of $400 a month. My land was different. Wild. Honest. Untamed. The kind of place where a man could breathe without someone measuring the length of his exhalations. I drove out there on a Thursday afternoon, August 21st. Met the listing agent, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, who looked like she'd shown the property a dozen times and gotten 0 offers. "It needs a lot of work," she said apologetically, as we drove up the rutted Caliche Road. "The previous owner died in 2019, and it's been sitting empty ever since. Estate finally decided to sell." "That's fine," I said. "I like projects." She glanced at me in the rearview mirror, probably wondering what a black man in his 40s was doing, buying 200 acres of scrubland 40 minutes from nowhere, but she was professional enough not to ask. The land rolled out before us like an old blanket, worn but serviceable. Dry creek beds cut through limestone shelves, cedar and oak trees clustered in the low spots where water would run during heavy rains. Prairie grass and prickly pear cactus covered the rest. An old stock tank sat in the southern corner, half full of green water and cattails. A collapsed barbed wire fence marked the eastern boundary. And near the center of the property, leaning but still standing, was an old barn built sometime in the 1952 out of cedar posts and corrugated tin. To most people, it probably looked like a disaster. To me, it looked like home. "What's that over there?" I asked, pointing at the western edge where the land rose to a small ridge. Patricia checked her notes. "That's where Sage Hill Estates begins. Their property line is about a quarter mile that way. Shouldn't be any issues with them, though. This land's been independent since it was originally surveyed in 1952. Any easements? Any restrictions? Any claims from adjacent landowners? She flipped through her folder. Nope, clean title, no liens, no easements. And the survey from earlier this year confirms the boundaries haven't changed. I walked the property for an hour, checked the fence lines, examined the barn's foundation, tested the soil, looked at sight lines and water flow and prevailing winds. Then I made Patricia an offer on the spot, $165,000. Cash. Close in 3 weeks. She blinked. You don't want to think about it? I've been thinking about it for 20 years, I said. This is it. I closed on September 15th, 2024, a Sunday. Unusual day for a closing. But the title company made an exception because I was paying cash and they wanted the deal done. Walked into the Bexar County Recorder's office the following Monday morning with a folder of documents thick enough to stop a bullet. Warranty deed, survey plat, certified by a Texas registered professional land surveyor, title insurance policy, tax certificates, water rights documentation, and a hand-drawn map from 1952 showing the original Caldwell family property boundaries. Everything clean, everything clear, everything legally bulletproof, everything mine. The clerk, a young woman named Jessica who looked fresh out of college, processed everything with the kind of bored efficiency that comes from filing the same paperwork 50 times a week. You're all set, mister. Washington, she said, handing me a stamped copy of the recorded deed. Congratulations on your new property. I took that paper and walked out into the September heat, feeling lighter than I had in years. Like someone had cut loose a chain I didn't even know I'd been dragging. 2 days later, September 17th, I moved onto the property with everything I owned. A 1,973 Airstream trailer I'd bought for $8,000 and spent 3 months renovating, a solar generator system powerful enough to run lights, and a small refrigerator. A Milwaukee tool chest full of survey equipment I'd accumulated over 18 years, and enough hand tools to start restoration work. The Airstream wasn't fancy. Dented aluminum siding, a door that stuck when it rained, a shower the size of a phone booth. But it was paid for, it was mobile, and it was mine. I parked it next to the barn on a level spot with a view east toward the sunrise and got to work. The first week was quiet in a way that made my chest ache. Beautifully, perfectly quiet. No traffic noise, no sirens. No neighbors running leaf blowers at 7 a.m. or playing bass-heavy music at midnight. Just wind through grass, birds calling, coyotes yipping in the distance after dark, the occasional rumble of thunder from storms that would build over the hills and then break apart before reaching my property. Mornings, I'd wake up before dawn, brew thick black coffee on a propane camp stove, and sit on an old folding chair watching the sky turn from black to purple to orange to that hard blue. That means it's going to be another hot one. Days, I worked. Cleared brush from around the barn. Rebuilt the collapsed section of fence along the eastern boundary using cedar posts I cut from trees on the property. Repaired the stock tank's earthen dam where erosion had opened a gap. Installed trail cameras at strategic points to monitor wildlife and document the land's condition. I even posted a few photos in a local conservation group on Facebook. Showed the before and after shots of the stock tank repair, the cleared brush, the new fence line. People wrote nice things. Glad someone's bringing the old Caldwell place back to life. Beautiful work. That land deserves someone who cares. Welcome to the hill country. You've got a gem there. For once in my adult life, I felt like the good guy in the story, like I was building something instead of just documenting what other people had destroyed. Then, on September 25th, 10 days after I'd moved in, Sheriff Tom Bowman stopped by. I heard his cruiser coming before I saw it. That particular sound of county-issue tires on caliche gravel. Looked up from the fence post I was setting and watched him roll to a stop near my Airstream. Big man. Mid-50s. The kind of substantial gut that spoke of too many years behind a desk and not enough chasing suspects. Regulation haircut going gray at the temples. Face like weathered leather. He stepped out slowly, the way cops do when they're not sure if they're walking into a problem, and looked around at my property with what seemed like genuine approval. "You must be Washington," he called out. "That's me," I said, setting down the post hole diggers and walking over. We shook hands. His grip was firm but not aggressive. Testing? Maybe. Seeing what kind of man I was. "Tom Bowman, County Sheriff. Heard you're the one fixing up the old Caldwell tract." "Trying to? Got a long way to go." He nodded, thumbs hooked in his duty belt. "It's good. Place has been an eyesore for years. Estate couldn't figure out what to do with it, and the vultures kept circling, trying to buy it for pennies on the dollar." Vultures? Developers. HOA folks. He glanced west, toward where Sage Hill Estate sat beyond the ridge. "They've been trying to expand in this direction for a couple years now. Your land sits right in their path." Something in his tone made me pay attention. "They try to buy it from the estate?" "Multiple times. Made some pretty aggressive offers too, but the family wanted it to go to someone who'd actually use it, not some developer who'd flip it or carve it into quarter-acre lots." I filed that information away. "Well, they're out of luck now." "I'm not selling," Bowman smiled. But there was something else behind it. Not quite worry, more like warning. "Good," he said. "Just." He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Don't let those HOA folks push you around. They like to think the county ends where their street signs start. And they're not always real particular about property lines when they want something." I raised an eyebrow. "Speaking from experience?" "Let's just say I've had to respond to more than a few disputes in the past couple years. HOA claiming someone's fence is 6 inches over the line. HOA saying a property owner can't park their work truck on their own land. HOA trying to fine people who don't even live in their jurisdiction." He adjusted his belt again. "You keep your paperwork handy. Deed, survey, title policy, and if they try anything, you call me. Directly." He handed me a business card with his personal cell number written on the back in ballpoint pen. "I will," I said. "You former military?" he asked suddenly. "Army, 18 years, Corps of Engineers." He nodded, like that explained something. "Figured. Got that look about you. Organized. Squared away." He glanced at my perfectly aligned fence posts. "You'll be fine out here. Just keep your eyes open." He climbed back into his cruiser and drove off, leaving me standing there with his business card in my hand and a knot of unease forming in my gut. At the time, I thought he was being overly cautious, maybe a little paranoid. I didn't realize he was trying to warn me about a war I didn't even know was coming. Not until 3 days later, September 28th, a Wednesday morning. When I met her, it was a Wednesday morning, October 9th. I was trimming mesquite along the southern fence line when I heard tires on gravel. Not ranch tires, not work truck tires. Something smoother, expensive. A pearl white Escalade rolled to a stop like it owned the road just by touching it. The door opened, and out stepped a woman who looked like she'd been assembled by a committee of interior designers. Mid-40s. Trim. Blonde hair cut in a sharp bob that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. Oversized sunglasses. A tablet clutched in both hands like a scepter, but it was the outfit that caught my attention. Crimson red blazer, tailored sharp. Worn open over a black silk blouse with a deep V-neck. Black pencil skirt. Red heels so shiny they looked like patent leather, the kind of clothes you wear when you want people to know you're in charge. She didn't smile. She appraised. "Excuse me," she called out. Not a question. A summons. I set down the branch trimmer and walked over, wiping dirt off my hands. "Morning? Something I can help you with?" She adjusted her sunglasses and studied me like I was a code violation waiting to be documented. "I'm Karen Whitmore, president of the Sage Hill Estates Homeowners Association." She waited for recognition. I nodded. "Marcus Washington. I own this land." Her smile tightened. "Yes, we've noticed increased activity here. Heavy equipment, clearing, construction noise. It's raised concerns among residents about compliance with community standards." I blinked. "Community standards?" Sage Hill Estates maintains strict aesthetic and environmental guidelines to protect property values. All landowners within our jurisdiction are required to submit improvement plans for approval before beginning work. Ma'am, I said carefully, this property isn't part of Sage Hill Estates. I checked before I bought it. The subdivision boundaries end a quarter-mile that way. I pointed west. This land has been independent since the 1,950 seconds. Her expression didn't change. I'm sure that's what your realtor told you, but boundaries have been adjusted. You'll be receiving updated information shortly. The way she said adjusted made my stomach tighten. Adjusted by who? The county planning department, in coordination with our expansion committee. She tapped her tablet. Sage Hill Estates has been approved for Phase 3 development. Your property falls within the revised community buffer zone. I stared at her. Buffer zone. For aesthetic consistency and infrastructure planning. She smiled. Professional. Cold. You'll receive formal notification within 10 days. I just wanted to introduce myself personally. Neighbor to neighbor. She turned and walked back to her Escalade, heels clicking on gravel, leaving behind a faint cloud of expensive perfume and something heavier. Threat. I stood there, hands on my hips, watching her drive away. Boundaries have been adjusted. I'd testified in enough land fraud cases to know what that phrase meant. Someone had redrawn the map, and they thought I wouldn't notice. That night, sitting in my Airstream with the propane heater humming softly in the corner, I couldn't shake Karen's voice from my head. Boundaries have been adjusted. Not, we think there's been a mistake. Not, let's review the survey together. Not, perhaps we should check with the county. Adjusted. Like it was already done. Already decided. Like reality itself had been rewritten while I wasn't looking. I pulled out my deed folder and spread everything across the small folding table. Every page, every attachment, every recorded survey document. The boundaries were crystal clear. The survey had been done in June 2024 by Harrison and Associates, a reputable firm I'd actually worked with on a core project back in 2019. Professional, thorough, zero chance they'd make a mistake that big. According to their certified plat map, my property's western boundary sat 1,347 feet east of Sage Hill Estates' eastern edge, more than a quarter mile. Not even close. Not touching, not adjacent, separated by a significant buffer of undeveloped county land. My survey markers were right where they should be, rebar stakes driven deep, aluminum caps stamped with the surveyor's registration number and date. I'd personally checked each corner with my own GPS unit when I first walked the property. Everything matched. So how could Karen stand on my land and tell me with complete confidence that boundaries have been adjusted? There was only one logical answer. Someone had changed the official records. I opened my laptop, a ruggedized Panasonic Toughbook I'd used for fieldwork, and pulled up the Begzar County Geographic Information System, the same public mapping portal I'd used thousands of times during my career, the same system that every real estate agent, surveyor, and title company in the county relies on for property information. Typed in my parcel number 042228C, waited while the map loaded. Satellite imagery resolving from blurry to sharp. For a moment, everything looked normal. The same boundaries I'd seen when I bought the property. The same acreage, 200.4 acres, according to the official calculation. The same coordinates matching my survey plat. Then I clicked on a button most people never notice. Boundary Revision History. The page hesitated. My internet connection out here was satellite-based and slow. The browser's loading icon spun. Finally, the data populated, and my blood went cold. Boundary adjustment request approved. Timestamp 2 hours, 13 minutes, and 47 seconds. AM date the 6th of October 2024. Status processed. I stared at the screen, pulse climbing into my throat. October 6th, 3 days ago, the night before Karen showed up at my property, 2:13 inches the morning. Who approves boundary adjustments at 2:13 inches the morning? County offices close at 5 p.m. Even emergency filings require multiple signatures and notarized documents during business hours. I clicked on the entry. It expanded, revealing more details. User ID, Clerk M. Santos. Action, Boundary, Realignment, Manual, Edit, Method, Digital Adjustment via GIS Administrator Panel, supporting documents, none uploaded, Review signatures, none recorded, Notification sent, no, Adjacent property notification, no. My hands were shaking now, not from fear, from controlled fury. This wasn't a legitimate boundary revision. This was digital fraud committed by someone with access to the county's mapping system. A manual edit at 2:13 inches the morning. No supporting documents. No review signatures. No notification to adjacent landowners, which was legally required for any boundary change. Nothing. Someone had simply logged into the county GIS system in the dead of night and dragged my property line westward like they were playing with a drawing tool in Microsoft Paint. I zoomed in on the map, toggling between the current view and the historical boundary layer. There. The difference was subtle, but unmistakable. My western property line had been moved 73 feet towards Sage Hill Estates. Not a small adjustment, not a surveying correction, a deliberate grab. 73 feet along a boundary that ran 2,400 feet north to south. That was 3.5 acres of my land, worth roughly $70,000 at current market rates, that had been digitally transferred into what appeared to be a community buffer zone controlled by the HOA. I took 3 screenshots. Different zoom levels, different data layers toggled on and off, all automatically time-stamped by my computer's operating system. Then I opened the GIS Maps metadata panel, a feature most casual users don't even know exists. It showed every edit made to my parcel record in the past 5 years. The log was chilling in its simplicity. The 12th of September 2024, 2:47 p.m. Property deed recorded, Washington M. The 6th of October 2024, 2 hours, 13 minutes, and 47 seconds. A. M. Boundary adjustment. Santos, M. 2 entries. 1 legitimate, 1 criminal. I printed everything in full color, survey map, screenshot of the boundary revision history, metadata log, the GIS Administrator audit trail, even printed the error-free survey from June 2024 for comparison. Slid everything into a waterproof document folder, locked it in the Airstream's small safe, because I'd learned one critical thing during 18 years of expert testimony. Digital evidence is fragile. Databases get corrected. Logs get cleaned. Files mysteriously disappear when people realize they've left a trail. But paper, backed up with photographs and witness testimony paper, was harder to make vanish. At 11:47 p.m., I called Daniel Martinez. He answered on the third ring, voice groggy. "Marcus, it's almost midnight. This better be important. Someone forged my property boundary in the county GIS system." Silence. Long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then, "Say that again." Slowly. I told him everything. Karen's visit. The 2:13 a.m. Timestamp. The manual edit with no supporting documents. The 73 feet grab. When I finished, Daniel let out a low whistle, followed by a string of Spanish profanity I hadn't heard since our deployment in Kandahar. "Marcus, that's not just fraud. That's conspiracy. That's criminal misrepresentation of official records. That's..." He paused, and I heard papers rustling. He was taking notes. "How much documentation do you have?" Screenshots with timestamps, metadata logs, original certified survey from June, audit trail showing exactly who made the edit and when. Jesus Christ. You're not building a defense. You're building a prosecution case. I know. Okay. Listen carefully. Don't talk to anyone about this. Not neighbors, not the HOA, especially not this Karen woman if she comes back. Don't respond to any notices they send. Don't pay any fines. Just document everything and send it to me. They're going to escalate, I said. Good. Daniel replied, and I heard the predatory satisfaction in his voice. Because when they put their fraud in writing, we're going to bury them so deep they'll need archaeological equipment to find daylight. What's my next move? Call the county clerk's office first thing tomorrow morning. Ask about the boundary revision. Record the call if Texas law allows it, which it does. We're a one-party consent state. Get them on record saying either they don't know about it or it was unauthorized. Then send me everything. And if this clerk Santos tries to cover it up, even better. That's evidence of obstruction. Marcus, you've just caught them red-handed. The only question now is whether they're stupid enough to make it worse. We hung up. I sat in the dark airstream, wind rattling the aluminum siding, and stared at my printed evidence. Karen Whitmore had come to my land with absolute confidence. With the certainty of someone who'd already won, she thought she'd rewritten reality at 2. 13 inches the morning with a few mouse clicks and a corrupt county clerk. She was wrong. And tomorrow morning, I was going to start proving it. I woke up at dawn to find a paper taped to my gate. The wind had torn at the edges. Rain from overnight had bled the ink, but the message was clear. Notice of violation, Sage Hill Estates, HOA. Property 042228C. Violations identified: unauthorized land clearing, non-compliant structure repair, failure to submit landscaping plan, environmental disturbance. Initial assessment due $7,200. Payment due within 10 days to avoid legal action. I stood there, coffee cooling in my hand, staring at the number. $7,200 for cutting brush on my own land. I laughed. Short, sharp. The kind of laugh a man makes when he realizes someone thinks he's stupid. But the longer I stared at it, the less funny it got. Money was pressure. Money was intent. Money was the opening move. This wasn't a mistake. This was a declaration. We own you now. I crumpled the soggy paper and tossed it in a puddle. The ripple spread slowly, like the beginning of something I wasn't going to be able to ignore. That night, I didn't sleep well. The airstream creaked. Every sound felt like footsteps. Every flicker of light felt like headlights. Around 12:47 a.m., I heard something. Mechanical, electrical, high-pitched whine. My solar generator going silent. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside. Boots sinking in cool dirt. Moon bright enough to see the barn, but everything beyond sank into shadow. The generator shouldn't have gone silent, not unless someone cut the power. I didn't chase, didn't yell. I checked the cameras. Back inside, I pulled up the trail cam footage. Infrared, grainy but clear. 2 figures, hoodies, flashlights covered with red film. First one walked straight to my generator, crouched, snipped the power cable. Second one went to my gate, unbolted the hinge brackets. Then, the first guy turned his head, and the camera caught his face. Young, broad-shouldered, nervous, Tyler Whitmore, Karen's son. I sat there, staring at the frozen frame. Not angry, cold. This wasn't administrative pressure anymore. This was criminal trespass, property destruction, premeditation. I copied the footage to a flash drive, labeled it Threat Log #2. Sabotage. Then I drove to Sheriff Bowman's office. He opened the door in sweatpants and a flannel shirt, rubbing sleep from his eyes. I set the flash drive on his desk. He plugged it in, watched. Halfway through, he muttered one word, "Damn." When it ended, he leaned back and exhaled slow. Cutting your generator, unbolting your gate. That's felony territory. You going to arrest him? He hesitated. Just long enough for the truth to show. Marcus, HOA folks, lawyer up fast. This is going to require an investigation. I stepped closer. If I cut their power, would I be sitting here, or would I be in cuffs? He didn't answer, because we both knew. I wasn't dealing with rules anymore. I was dealing with people who thought they were untouchable. And people like that only stop when someone stronger pushes back. By morning, I half expected the HOA to back off. That's what reasonable people do when they get caught on camera committing felonies. But Karen wasn't reasonable. When I opened my gate at dawn, I found 5 envelopes wedged into the wire mesh, all white, all stamped, Sage Hill Estates Community Affairs. I tore them open one by one. Unauthorized structure repair, fine, $350. Noise complaint, fine, $480. Violation, environmental disruption, fine, $1,250. Refusal to submit landscaping plan, fine, $250. The 5th envelope was thicker. Inside, notice of eviction for failure to maintain community compliance. I stared at it until the words blurred. Eviction. On land I owned outright. At the bottom, failure to vacate may result in removal by Sage Hill enforcement personnel. I folded the letter slowly. They wanted my land, and they wanted it fast. But they had one problem. I wasn't going anywhere. I spent the next week documenting everything, resurveying my boundaries, taking GPS readings at every corner marker. The numbers didn't lie. My fence sat exactly where my deed said it should. 1,347 feet east of Sage Hill Estates. But the county's digital map now showed my property line 73 feet westward. A grab, deliberate, traceable. I printed everything, coordinates, photos, satellite logs. Then I set the trap. There was an old groundwater monitoring well on my southern boundary, state registered, capped decades ago but still legally protected. I cleared the brush around it, stretched yellow caution tape in a neat square, bolted a laminated sign to a post, protected aquifer monitoring zone, unauthorized access prohibited, Texas Water Code section 36.117. Then I made myself scarce, parked my truck behind the barn, turned off half the lights, made it look like I'd left for the weekend. If the HOA wanted my land badly enough, they'd take the bait, and 3 days later, they did. I came back from a supply run on November 18th, Monday evening, just after sunset, and saw it immediately. Fresh dirt, orange flags, PVC stakes, a trench, 6 feet wide, 8 feet deep, running straight through the protected monitoring zone. I pulled over, got out slowly, walked to the edge. They hadn't just trespassed. They'd violated an environmental protection zone I had clearly marked, which meant this wasn't civil anymore. This was criminal. I pulled out my phone and started documenting. Photos, videos, GPS coordinates. Then I saw the sign they'd left behind. Community Drainage Integration, Phase 1. Sage Hill Estates Infrastructure Division. I scanned the QR code. It linked to a PDF on their website. A map showing my southern boundary labeled as unclaimed buffer acreage eligible for HOA infrastructure, and there barely visible a faint distortion where my property line should have been. A cut and paste job, badly blended. I zoomed in on the metadata, edited by K. Whitmore, software, Adobe Illustrator CC. Last modified, 1:22 a.m., another late night operation, another paper trail. I saved everything. Screenshots, PDFs, metadata. Then I called Daniel. They dug, I said. Through the monitoring zone? Yeah, that's environmental interference. That's not civil. That's criminal. I know. Send me everything. I'm filing an emergency complaint with the state surveyor's office. Within 48 hours, a state investigator was on my property taking readings. When she finished, she handed me a written preliminary finding. Boundary is correct. HOA trench is 73 feet inside private property. Map PDF is forged. Daniel nearly shouted with joy when I sent it to him. That same day, he filed a formal complaint. Criminal misrepresentation of land boundaries. Forgery. Environmental interference. Trespass. By nightfall, my land wasn't just a dispute. It was a criminal investigation. 3 days after the state filed their report, my phone rang at 6:11 a.m. Unknown number. I answered. A woman's voice, soft, rushed, terrified. Please don't hang up. My name is Lorraine Harper. I worked for the HOA. I need to talk to you. Her breath hitched, like she'd been crying. Then talk. Not on the phone. They monitor everything. Karen will. Her voice cracked. She'll destroy anyone who crosses her. Where? The diner on Highway 90. The one with the green awning. 10 minutes. She was already there when I arrived. Mid-40s. Tired eyes. Clutching a manila folder so hard her knuckles were white. I sat down. She pushed the folder across the table. I'm not doing this to help you, she said. I'm doing it to save myself. Inside was a black ledger, receipts, handwritten notes, photocopied checks. She flipped it open. Golf course expansion, parcel acquisition, developer, Crestview Partners LLC, kickback upon completion, $500,000. My stomach tightened. Karen told the board your land was dead space, Lorraine whispered. She needed it for the golf course extension. Developer promised her $500,000 if she delivered your acreage clean. And the forged map? She paid someone. Her nephew. He works with Adobe, bragged about it at the Christmas party. I flipped through the pages. County facilitation, $6,750. That's the bribe, Lorraine said. The clerk who edited your parcel at 2:13 a.m.? I stared at the number. This wasn't just fraud. This was conspiracy. Why come to me now? Because investigators are circling, and when Karen panics, she looks for someone to blame. Her eyes glistened. Take the ledger. Give it to your lawyer. If they ask, tell them I'm ready to testify. She stood, smoothed her shirt. One more thing. Karen thinks she's untouchable, but she forgot something. What? Lorraine smiled thin. Paper trails don't lie. She left. I sat there, staring at the ledger. $500,000. That's why Karen forged county records. Why she dug through protected land. Why she risked everything. Greed. I slid the ledger into my jacket and drove straight to Daniel's office. The morning of December 2nd started quiet. I was on my porch with coffee when 3 SUVs rolled up my gravel road. Blacked out windows, government plates, district attorney's task force. The lead vehicle stopped. D.A. Royce stepped out. Morning, Mr. Washington. Quite a case you've built. Behind him, investigators emerged. Tablets, cameras, evidence bags. We're paying Sage Hill Estates a visit. Want to come? I nodded. We parked in front of the HOA office. Sheriff Daniels pounded on the door. Karen Whitmore, open up. No answer. He nodded to his deputy. One clean swing of a breaching bar. The door flew open. Papers fluttered. A woman shrieked. Investigators poured through. Photographing. Bagging documents. Disconnecting computers. Sir, we found something. In the back room, an investigator held up a USB stick labeled Map Template, Final Draft. Another sat at Karen's computer, scrolling through an Adobe Illustrator file. There it was, the original map. Clean boundaries. Then Karen's lair. Pushing the HOA line 73 feet into my property. Author, K. Whitmore. Edited. 2:13 a.m. Smoking gun. A commotion in the hallway. Sheriff Daniels let out a man in a county clerk shirt. Name tag, M. Santos. The clerk who'd edited my parcel at 2:13 a.m. I didn't do anything wrong, he stammered. Karen said it was approved. So she paid you $6,750 for cleanup? Daniels said. Santos's face collapsed. It was just once. My wife's medical bills. You falsified a public record, the DA said. That's a felony. I'll cooperate. I'll tell you everything. They let him out. I found Karen in the back office, rifling through drawers, papers flying. When she saw me, her expression twisted to pure hatred. You, she hissed, you ruined everything. No, I said calmly. You did that yourself. Sheriff Daniels stepped in. Karen Whitmore, you're under arrest for falsification of land records, environmental interference, conspiracy to commit fraud, and bribery of a public official. Her eyes went wild. You can't arrest me. I'm the HOA president. Daniels actually laughed. Lady, that's not a title. That's a hobby. Click. The handcuffs snapped. They promised me $500,000, she whispered. The confession spilled out before she realized. Daniels raised an eyebrow. Thanks for confirming motive. They let her out. Residents gathered outside, filming, whispering, staring. Karen twisted toward them. Don't let him take your homes. He doesn't belong here. A deputy pushed her into the SUV. The door shut. The queen had fallen. The Bexar County Courthouse was packed when I arrived at 9:15 a.m. on the day before Thanksgiving. The timing wasn't accidental. Prosecutors love scheduling high-profile hearings right before holidays when courtrooms are empty and defendants are distracted by family obligations. But today, every seat was filled. Reporters, neighbors from Sage Hill Estates, other landowners who'd faced HOA harassment, a handful of veterans from the local VFW post who'd heard about the case on social media, even Patricia, the real estate agent who'd sold me the property, sitting in the back row with a satisfied smile. Daniel sat beside me at the plaintiff's table, wearing his courtroom suit and the focused expression I remembered from when we'd testified in federal cases together. You ready? He murmured. Been ready since 2:13 a.m. on October 6th. He smiled grimly. Good answer, the bailiff called out. All rise. Judge Angela Cordova entered, early 60s. Silver hair pulled back tight. The kind of judge who'd seen every scheme, heard every excuse, and had exactly zero patience for people who thought they were above the law. She settled behind the bench, adjusted her reading glasses, and opened the case file. The State of Texas versus Karen Marie Whitmore, she read aloud. Multiple charges including fraudulent boundary manipulation, falsification of public land records, conspiracy to commit fraud, environmental interference under state water code, and bribery of a public official. She looked up at the defense table. Karen shuffled in wearing orange Bexar County jail scrubs. No crimson blazer, no red heels, no carefully styled hair. Just flat, greasy strands pulled back with a plastic hair tie and the hollow-eyed look of someone who hadn't slept in 3 weeks. She'd aged a decade in the 35 days since her arrest. When she saw me sitting at the plaintiff's table, something flickered in her eyes. Not remorse, not shame, hatred. Pure, distilled hatred. Good. Let her hate. Hate didn't change facts. The DA, a sharp woman named Rita Vasquez, who'd built her career prosecuting white-collar crime, stood and addressed the court. Your Honor, the state has compiled overwhelming evidence of a systematic scheme to defraud Mr. Marcus Washington of legally owned property for personal financial gain. She pulled up a projection screen. First slide, the 2:13 a.m. GIS edit, timestamp clearly visible. On October 6th, 2024, at 2:13 inches the morning, County Clerk Manuel Santos, acting at the direction and financial incentive of Mrs. Whitmore, logged into the Bexar County Geographic Information System and manually altered Mr. Washington's property boundary. Next slide. The forged map PDF that had been on the HOA website. Mrs. Whitmore then created fraudulent documentation showing Mr. Washington's land as part of Sage Hill Estates jurisdiction. This was done using Adobe Illustrator CC, and the file metadata conclusively identifies her as the author. Click. The metadata screenshot filled the screen. Author K. Whitmore, created 1:22 a.m. the 7th of October 2024. Adobe Illustrator CC 2024. Several people in the gallery gasped. Karen's attorney, an expensive-looking man named Bradford, who specialized in defending wealthy defendants, rose to object. Your Honor, this is circumstantial. Sit down, counselor, Judge Cordova said flatly. I'm looking at time-stamped digital evidence created on your client's computer using software registered to her name. That's not circumstantial. That's documentary. Bradford sat down. DA Vasquez continued. Mrs. Whitmore's motive was financial. She had entered into an agreement with Crestview Partners LLC, a golf course development company that would pay her $500,000 upon successful acquisition of Mr. Washington's southern acreage. Next slide. A page from Lorraine's ledger. Golf course expansion. Parcel acquisition. Developer, Crestview Partners. Commission upon completion, $500,000. Signed, K. Whitmore. September 2024. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Cordova banged her gavel once. Silence fell immediately. Additionally, Vasquez said, Mrs. Whitmore bribed County Clerk Manuel Santos with $6,750 to facilitate the illegal boundary change. Mr. Santos has cooperated with investigators and will testify against Mrs. Whitmore in exchange for a reduced sentence. She gestured to the back of the courtroom where Santos sat, looking like a man who wanted to disappear into his chair. Finally, Mrs. Whitmore authorized excavation of a 6-foot trench through a state-protected aquifer monitoring zone, causing environmental damage and violating Texas Water Code Section 36.117. The projection changed to show photographs of the trench on my land, the yellow caution tape, the violated monitoring well. This wasn't a property dispute, Vasquez concluded. This was an organized criminal conspiracy to steal land through fraud, forgery, and bribery. The evidence is overwhelming and irrefutable. She sat down. Bradford stood for the defense, but his heart clearly wasn't in it. Your Honor, Mrs. Whitmore is a respected community leader with no prior criminal history. She made errors in judgment, yes, but her intent was to benefit the community through planned development. Judge Cordova cut him off with a raised hand. Counselor, I've reviewed the evidence. Your client forged government documents. She bribed a public official. She trespassed on private property and caused environmental damage. And she did all of this in pursuit of a $500,000 kickback. She removed her glasses. That's not errors in judgment. That's premeditated fraud for personal enrichment. Bradford opened his mouth, closed it, sat down. Judge Cordova looked at Karen directly. Mrs. Whitmore, do you have anything to say before I render judgment? Karen stood slowly. Her hands trembled. When she spoke, her voice cracked. I did everything for the community, for property values, to make Sage Hill Estates the best neighborhood in the county. Her voice rose, desperate. That land was wasted, sitting empty. I was going to turn it into something beautiful, something valuable, something profitable. Judge Cordova interrupted. For you, $500,000 profitable. Karen's face flushed. He doesn't belong there. That land should be part of our community. We worked for years to build Sage Hill Estates into something special, and he just shows up. And she caught herself. Too late. Judge Cordova's expression hardened. Mrs. Whitmore, you abused your position of authority in a homeowners association. You forged official government records. You bribed a public official. You violated environmental protection laws. And you attempted to seize property that did not belong to you. Property owned by a decorated military veteran purely for personal financial gain. She paused, letting each word land like a hammer. The fact that your victim happened to be a black man purchasing land in a predominantly white area, and that you just stated he doesn't belong there, adds an additional dimension of contempt to your actions. Karen's face went from red to white. This court sentences you to 7 years in Texas State Prison. You will be eligible for supervised release after serving a minimum of 4 years. Additionally, you are fined $75,000, which will be paid in restitution to Mr. Washington, and you are permanently barred from holding any position of authority in any homeowners association in the state of Texas. The gavel came down. Bang. Bailiff, remove the defendant. Karen swayed. For a moment, I thought she might faint. Then she twisted back toward me, being led away in handcuffs, and screamed, "This isn't over. You can't just, you people always..." The bailiff pulled her through the door. It slammed shut, cutting off her voice mid-sentence. The courtroom sat in stunned silence for 3 full seconds. Then, slowly, applause began. Scattered at first. Then building, reporters, neighbors, veterans. Judge Cordova banged her gavel again. Order. The applause stopped, but the satisfaction in the room was palpable. Tyler Whitmore was sentenced next. 3 years probation. 200 hours of community service. Permanent felony conviction for criminal trespass and tampering with utility equipment. He cried when the judge read the sentence, kept saying, "I'm sorry," over and over. I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for him. He'd cut my generator line. He'd tried to sabotage my property. He'd made his choices. Clerk Santos got 18 months in county jail, 5 years probation afterward, and a permanent ban from any government employment. When his lawyer asked the judge for leniency, citing his wife's medical bills, Judge Cordova was unmoved. "Mr. Santos, you sold the integrity of your public office for $6,750. You falsified official records that people rely on to determine property rights, rights worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. The fact that you needed money doesn't excuse what you did. It just makes it more tragic." Then came the final piece. Regarding Sage Hill Estates Homeowners Association, Judge Cordova said, reading from her notes, "This court finds that the organization, under Mrs. Whitmore's leadership, engaged in fraudulent activities, attempted to coerce non-members into paying unlawful dues, manipulated county zoning records, and violated state property laws." She looked up. "Effective immediately, Sage Hill Estates HOA is hereby dissolved. All assets are seized pending redistribution to affected property owners. The court appoints a special master to oversee the dissolution process." You could have heard a pin drop. Then someone in the back, a Sage Hill resident I didn't recognize, started clapping. Then another. Then the whole gallery erupted. This time, Judge Cordova didn't stop them. Outside, reporters swarmed. "Mr. Washington, do you have a statement?" I stepped forward. "I bought this land to be left alone. When someone tried to take it through fraud, I fought back using the only weapons that matter: truth, documentation, and the law." I paused. "If you own land, protect it. Because there are always people who think they can take what isn't theirs." When I got home, the sky was gold. Bees buzzed. Creek water trickled. My airstream glinted. The land felt alive again. Mine again. I carried a carved cedar plank to the gate, bolted it to the post. "Private land begins here, and your fantasies end." For the first time in months, I felt real peace. No drones, no forged maps, no trenches, no Karen. Just wind through grass, coyotes in the distance, solar panels humming. My land, hard won, hard fought, finally mine again. I closed the gate, locked it, and walked home.